All right, welcome back to Power Forward. Justin White alongside Mateen Cleaves. Mateen, what's going on, my man?
Oh, yeah, Justin. I am fantastic. Flying high, man. Ready to make it happen, baby.
Well, we got a great show today, Mateen. One thing that you know well is how much life changed for all of us during the pandemic. And one thing that changed in particular is exercise. You know, a huge part of so many people's lives. And, you know, the pandemic hits, and one of the first things to change or shut down is the gyms. In a lot of fitness studios, and people are scrambling. I know that you like to work out, being the former athlete that you are. For me, it's a huge part of my life. And I know that we were scrambling, you know, once they shut down the gyms, it was like first thing, all right, go to Amazon, order a treadmill, and hope that thing shows up. Fortunately, it did. But I mean, it was looking back, it was pretty crazy to think about what changed in terms of the way we exercise, right?
Oh, man, it was crazy, man. And people had to come up with creative ways and, you know, to change to stay in some kind of shape. Yeah, but it was definitely a game changer.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, it's not just about staying in shape. It's, for me, exercise is just about the mental side of it as it is the physical. And it's such an important part of so many people's lives. And our guest today knows all about that because this is her business. It is not only her passion, it is her business as well. We are really excited to be joined by Lauren Foundos. She is the founder and CEO of a company called Forte. It is a technology company. And I'm going to let Lauren explain exactly what Forte is all about because she's going to do a way better job than I would. But Lauren, first of all, welcome to Power Forward. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm happy that I'm with two other fitness buffs. Makes me happy.
Well, I'm trying to get Mateen. You know, whenever I see him around the office, I'm always asking him. I'm like, when's the last time you worked out? Have you run lately? I'm trying to push him. I'm trying to, you know, keep him motivated. But let's just jump in right there. So tell our listeners about Forte, about your company and what you guys are all about.
For sure, yeah. So my company actually helps gyms build a premium digital experience from start to finish. So all the way from the filming side of things, how to live stream the classes, to the actual platform that they deliver to customers. That's super fun and interactive with two-way videos and live leaderboards and all that kind of stuff. And obviously at the start of the pandemic, it was a good business before the pandemic because the consumer wanted digital fitness, but it was a great business when the pandemic hit because all the gyms were closed and the only way for them to connect to their customer was to have a digital fitness product. So obviously that was a super exciting time for the company. And, you know, now happy to say that we power the NFL Players Association, the UFC, Under Armour World Headquarters Gym, Good Life Fitness, which is Canada's largest gym chain. So super exciting time, you know, for the company. Certainly a lot of growth, and obviously also really good for the industry because the industry was sort of like just sitting back and hoping technology would just like go away. And so this really forced them to sort of, you know, fast forward with the consumer and also just the evolution of tech. And so in many ways, it was kind of good for the industry because it's the only way to succeed going forward.
Oh, man. Lauren just told us I am a big deal in so many different ways. Like, I love it. Now, let me
I've heard of those little companies.
You may have.
Let me ask you this. Like, where'd the idea come from? Like,
for sure.
Where'd you get the idea from?
Yeah, so I used to work on Wall Street trading government bonds, so nothing to do with technology. I have obviously always worked out my whole life, so that was something I was super passionate about. I started to become really like clear on what I thought the future was going to look like, and I actually invested in a place in the city and in the market, and I was trying to figure out other things to invest in. So I was looking at things that I was really excited about, which was fitness, and then I got pretty fixated on just the fitness world and where it was going and what I thought was going to happen. And I started talking to gyms that I was tight with to see if they would be interested in streaming because they were confined by just the people that could be there. And not everybody has access to good things. And, you know, some of them like were like, no, we don't want people to copy us. Like, I'm like, listen, everybody's doing push-ups and burpees. You didn't invent that. Like, you know, but you got to own it. Like in today's world, you got to get it out there and own it or everyone's going to steal your idea and then own it on Instagram. And they're going to be the ones with the idea. So, you know, but they had this mentality, but some of the gyms were like, let's get started. Let's do this thing. I'm like, dude, I got a job. I have no idea. I was just like spitballing this conversation with you. And I just became more and more fixated with that at work. And I just was like, I don't want to tell a sad story. Like, see that? I thought of that first. That was my idea. And like, I don't own the company. And it's just a sad, depressing story I tell every time I have a drink. And so I didn't want that to be me. And so I decided that I knew this was going to happen and that I ultimately needed to get started fast because, I other people were going to start to see that. And the world is today as I imagined it, which is very exciting. And as a founder too, when you're ahead of the curve and having to pitch people on what's to come, you either sound crazy or you end up being a genius, right? And you have to own that, right? And so, it's exciting to see the world where I had envisioned it going. And, obviously the pandemic further cemented that for the company for sure.
See, I love the fact that you have the idea and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to be another person who will say, yeah, I actually thought of that, or I could have done that. I mean, you took the bull by the horns and decided to just go for it. But that being said, you left a very successful job on Wall Street. I mean, you told me before that you were doing really well.
Yep. I bought a 3-floor loft. I had no intention of making $0 for the next 5 years. Wow. I had ratcheted up all my investments. I had no plan to do this. So that put a little, pressure on it. But I also, even like with my apartment, my lease came up. I'm like, Dad, I'm going to buy a place. He's like, well, you haven't even thought about it. And what if you get married? I'm like, well, I'm not engaged. And so everyone lives in New York City and regrets not buying a place. So I'm like, I don't want to, everyone's like, if I would have bought something 30 years ago, I'm like, every person I talk to says that. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to buy it. And then if my life changes, I'm going to sell it. And and now he's like, that was the best idea. I was like, yeah, I told you. So I feel like that's the attitude. I'm like, you hear people say these same themes over and over again. And I'm just like, the worst case scenario is that I know that I would never want to continue doing the job that I was doing. And I have this great fulfilling life. And the worst case scenario is it doesn't work out, but now I have this whole new path and figured out all this stuff that I enjoy doing. And the best case scenario is I build $1 billion company, which is what I'm vying to do. So I mean, either way, it's good.
Yeah. I mean, and clearly this is something, the ability to do that is something that's, I would think, ingrained in you and just the kind of person you are. But that being said, I'm also sure that you get people all the time coming up to you who may have an idea of their own and saying, well, I don't know. What do you think? How do I do it? I mean, how do you advise people, other aspiring entrepreneurs who approach you, or maybe you have a conversation with? I mean, what do you tell them about, that time when it comes time to actually figure out, okay, I need to either do this or I need to move on?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think ignorance is bliss. Like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I have not seen my friends in forever. I have to make a very solid effort to see my family. I just am in I'm like, oh my God, 5 years have just gone by. It's like a tunnel, and, you don't win by going to everybody's birthday party. And so, I know what it takes to win, and it's not by having, unfortunately, a super balanced approach to life. And so, especially in this game where, things are moving, the velocity of the market so fast. So I think it's obviously important to realize, if you have I can barely walk my dog during the day. I'm like, imagine people have 3 kids and they're starting, women are pregnant and starting companies. I'm like, I can't even remember to walk the dog. I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I mean, I guess it's up to the person, but I think understanding realistically what it takes, I think, is important, and what you have to give up. It's unfortunate that it's really hard to be, there's not enough hours in the day, but also knowing that if you feel really intent on that there's other ways to do it, whether that's working for a big company and having them facilitate you starting sort of your own little thing inside, or doing it with that has a little less pressure, right? I think there's ways to kind of immerse yourself and fill that void, or going to a startup that's more established, or things like that. So I feel like there's ways to do it that are maybe not as taking the plunge, depending on where you are in your, circle of life, I guess.
Yes. And you mentioned, having $1 billion company.
I know that got your attention, Mateen.
Oh yeah. She said the B word.
I won't stop until it is.
And I love that. And what makes me, and that's why I thought about when I just looked at, I hear you and you said, I just thought driven. She's driven. Totally. Where did that come from? Where did that mentality come from, Lauren?
For sure. Yeah. My father's from Albania. My parents are both Albanian. So I think he's always really instilled in us this work ethic that, like this is the greatest place on earth and that we should be so grateful for everything. And, I always used to laugh. I'm like, can I get a new bike? He's like, but you have a bike. I'm like, yeah, but every year people are getting new bikes. Like that's what kids do. Like, and in his brain, he's like, you only need one pair of sneakers so they don't work. And I'm like, I don't, so that was always my, I always had that sort of ingrained in the back of my head to be so grateful for these opportunities and to work so hard. And so I think that, and he is an entrepreneur. So all those lessons, and that things that drove me crazy that he would say, I'm like, I sit here at night and they're all in my head playing. And I'm like, I hate to say it, but I'm actually really grateful for all that they instilled, even though at the time I was like, oh, this is so frustrating. But I think, and just having the support of people around you too, right? Like certainly a lot of people are like, are you crazy to quit your job? Like you're killing it. Like I was like, I didn't just tell you I'm going to go wake up at 9 a.m. every day and drink. I mean, this is like the reactions were horrible. I'm like, this isn't very supportive, but my family was supportive. So that also was helpful. I think and you need to, surround yourself by people that are supportive with this, type of venture. It's very hard for them to understand. But I think, I've always been like, I have two older brothers that are significantly older than me. So I've always been like, just trying to keep up with them. Like if I wanted to play football with them, they'd be like, you got to sprint faster than us. And so I think I've always just been hustling like that since I was a little kid. And for them too, I'm super grateful.
I love the friendly competition between you and your brothers. I love that. I love that, Lord. I love it. But another thing that you said, and I'll let you get to your question, Justin, but I lit up. Not letting someone talk you off your passion. Because sometimes in life we have a vision or we have ideas. And it seemed like people were like, no, Lord, are you crazy? What are you thinking? But it seemed like you believed, and that's all you need. You believed in it and you put the drive behind it. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Totally. I mean, I think it's really easy for people to sit on the sidelines and say to not do things. And then most people, have a lot of regrets. I think, it's easy to judge. And what's the worst case scenario? Somebody's like, oh, remember when Lauren started that company, it didn't work out. And that's the conversation. And then they move on to their lives. Like that's the worst case scenario. It's like, guess what? Also, a lot of really good things can come from it too. So I feel like, just kind of having that attitude that, and even like now when I raise money, investors are, they always tell me an opinion based on their lens, if they're a marketing person or a salesperson or a tech guy or, and I'm like, they're thinking about this for the 30 minutes I'm in front of them. I think about this 24 hours a day, I literally have dreams about working. I wake up in my dream, I'm working. I'm like, I know this better than they do. Like, I think it's just really, obviously you have to know when things are going wrong too, but also have a certain conviction with your idea. And if you don't believe it, then also nobody else is going to believe it. Right. So that's the other thing is like, if you go in there and they're like, well, I think, I'm like, okay, no investor is going to invest in you if you're just thinking this. Like, you got to really believe what you're doing. And so I think that's the other thing. Unfortunately, I'm so passionate about this. I couldn't imagine starting a company like just for financial gain. Like, obviously there's a lot of opportunities. A lot of people do that. But for me, it's like, I'm so passionate. I live and breathe this that, makes it easy to feel this way, I guess.
Well, the hard work is paying off because, Mateen, I'm not sure if you know this, but Lauren went on a reality show called Unicorn Hunters and pitched her idea to, among others, a guy named Steve Wozniak, who is the co-founder of a little company called Apple, and got great reviews from Steve and others on the panel. Lauren, tell the story of how that opportunity came up and how you were able to absolutely knock it out of the park.
For sure. Yeah. Being that I'm competitive, I think it's important to say that I was the only company to get all of the judges to invest.
How about that?
Nice.
Yep. I like to take home a trophy there. We work with Microsoft and they picked us as this unique company that they really want to help bolster. And so they got us this opportunity. And it's basically like Shark Tank, except for growth capital. So instead of, raising a couple bucks from the various sharks, we're raising $20 million from the show. So it was super cool. It's Steve Wozniak, a former treasurer of the United States, Lance Bass from NSYNC. I almost sang, but then I stopped myself just now.
Our loss.
I can't sing or dance. And so a bunch of really awesome people. So that was an amazing opportunity, obviously, to sit there and, to email with Steve Wozniak. I didn't really watch a lot of TV growing up. I wasn't really allowed to. It's why I play the piano and violin and all these other weird extracurriculars. But I was obviously like starstruck meeting him. I know like nothing about pop culture, but I couldn't believe that I was, standing in front of the guy that literally invented the computer that I am attached to all day long. So pretty amazing opportunity. I like to take a minute sometimes and like, even just when I present or anything and look back, like I found my notes from like when I started the company and I wrote like, what is venture capital? Like, I'm like, what a dummy. I didn't know any, like I was looking at my piece of paper, like, look what you didn't know. Like, and I was really seriously, like, I thought it was really smart at the time. And I wrote all these things down that I, like what are, back-end developers, like things that now are so obvious to me. But I think it's important to also like note too, how far you've kind of come, because you're also just get so caught up in like grinding every day. Like, when I hadn't presented since like the third grade science fair. And then I started a company and I had to start like talking to people publicly and I hadn't ever really done that. So,
which is not easy.
Totally no.
No, I like the point you bring up too about just, it's okay to admit that you don't know something. I mean, how else are you going to learn unless you go and research it yourself or ask somebody? And now, you're in the position where you do know these things, and you now are in the position of being an innovator in this space, Lauren. We talked about it off the top of the show. I mean, the fitness industry has just exploded. I mean, with all these companies, and I mean, Peloton is basically a household name brand now. And I know that, you actually have a story.
$43 billion.
Yeah, it's just wild. I mean, how do you put into perspective this fitness industry that you are now a part of and what has happened to it, especially looking at it through the lens of what we all experienced during the pandemic?
Totally. I think what's so exciting, but also still there's such a long way to go. It's like most people in America still don't work out. We are breaking the odds right here with all of us actually being engaged. Like, I think the biggest opportunity still is that most people don't work out because they're just intimidated and there's a high barrier to entry. And that's really where I hope digital can really help people get comfortable with the idea. Most people say they'll go to the gym when they lose 50 pounds. They never lose 50 pounds, so they never go to the gym. And that, unfortunately, is a cycle for over 75% of people in the country. And in other countries, it's only 1% of people are active. So I think that this opportunity was important for the pandemic, for mental health, for the people that were active, and for the bigger, scheme of life is hopefully a means for just more people getting active. Like I always say, like, it's like if there's like no negative benefits. It's good for your cholesterol. It's good for your heart. You'll sleep better. It lowers depression. You'll feel better. Like there's like literally, these are the side effects. There's no negative ones. Like if anybody told you anything else, like, hey, do this is what you'll get from it, you would never hesitate. But for some reason, like people still hesitate. Like it's, I've always loved working out. It's always been like my own escape. And so it's very hard for me to like, I can't wait for that hour in the day 2 workout. I'm not dreading it by any stretch of the imagination. And so it's hard for me to understand what that's like. And I hope that like there's enough things out there that we can find, something that people like doing. So I think, I'm excited. I'm excited because I think this is going to be an opportunity for more people to get activated and hopefully, yeah.
Yes, indeed. You're making it easy for people. And I love that. And I'm one of those people, I was an athlete, tip-top shape. When I stopped playing, I took full advantage of not having to be in shape. Trust me. I relaxed. I started putting on weight. Then I got back to a routine. So I'm starting to get back to it. So I'm doing much better. But Lauren, you mentioned something and it intrigues me to ask you a question about it, because you said you had to realize how far you've come.
Yep.
Because I asked you a question earlier about being so driven. So I know you're always looking at what can I get better at? How can we make this better? What adjustment can I make to become better?
Totally.
But yet you seem like you have a balance, which I think is brilliant. And I think you need it to look at to the things that you are doing good as well. So when did you find that balance? Or because I know as a you as an ex-athlete, you always want to get better that's we're wired like that.
Totally.
Yeah, but now it seems like you found that balance. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think that's the best part about working out. I always tell people, like, you can't do a pull-up? Do this every day, do a bar hang, and then do a bar hang with your elbows bent. And then guess what? In 1 year, I don't care who you are, your body will do a pull-up. Like, that is how it works. Like, and I think like that's what's so amazing about working. Everyone obviously has different levels of, like there is some genetics there, but if you do these things, you get better at them. And I think that's the same thing with working, right? I think like all those quotes about like, the person doing the work when nobody's watching, all those things are cheesy, but they're so true. It's like, I think that's where, if you put in that work, it does pay off at the end of the day. And I think, especially in startups or work, like it's not always the smartest person that wins this game, because it is grueling. There are definitely long nights. And I think like, it's important to realize where you came from and that it's not going to be an overnight thing, right? That's the other thing. Is same with working out. Most people work out and then they don't feel skinny right away. They're like, and they stop. It's like the same thing here too. It's just that nothing happens overnight or everyone would be killing it, right? And I think that's the reality. So just like appreciating the slog and appreciating like the looking back of it too. Like, wow, like, even though I haven't got to my goal, like I'm a lot better than I was, a year or two ago. I think that's the reality.
So you start the company, you've got your fingerprints on it. This is your baby. But now the company has grown and you've got a team, you've got a large team. I think you said it's now over 70 full-time people at your company. Mm-hmm. As you're building out your team and you're thinking about the kind of company and culture that you want to build, what are the things that were foremost in your mind, Lauren? What were the things that you said to yourself, this is the kind of company I want to build, not just for now, but for the future as well?
For sure. Yeah. I think obviously I'm an athlete, so I realize that you can't win without a good team. And I think some people hesitate to hire people maybe smarter than them or that will challenge them. And I'm like the opposite. I'm like, if I can get LeBron James on my team, I'm like, come on, baby. I want to build the best team of all stars. I don't like get hung up in the fact that I feel like that just venerates that, you as well. So I think that's important too, to not feel challenged by those people and surround yourself by other great people. And also, I think like a lot of people also fear kind of giving up some of their power or, not doing everything yourself. And I think when you try to do everything yourself, you can only get so far. And then when you start to bring in all these people and trust that you hired the right people, you can really move fast. And I think that that's really important, like giving people the ability to own certain things. And yeah, is it exactly the way I was doing it? No. Is it exactly the way I would say it? No. But like, if you're going to give them ownership rights to run with the sales team or run with all these different divisions that I used to manage all of them, like, then you have to let them do that. And I think that that's been a fun and exciting process for me to learn. And also just, I come from Wall Street, which is really, they don't really care how you feel about anything. It's very cut and dry. It's a different mentality versus the tech world, is more like, Google offices and Happy Land and everything is a different world. So I've had to like definitely maybe tone it back or become a little more understanding of things as opposed to like sort of to get people to thrive, which was like, especially in sports too, and playing on D1 number one team, it was very militant. So that's been like probably the hardest lesson, was just like figuring out how to coach all the different people and to really, understand what everybody needs is a little bit different. So that's probably been the biggest learning curve for me is managing other people. Right. And, because I have high expectations.
Oh yeah. And it's funny because I meet with leaders on a daily basis, and I have leaders, they get frustrated because some people are not as driven and they don't want to be as successful. I'm like, that's why you're the leader.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now let's make somebody better. Let's pull it out of them. Okay. Totally. But I'm glad you mentioned that because I had a leader and he's led over a ton of people here, but 9 of his leaders have went on to lead other teams. Yep. And he was like, oh, that is great. I feel so good about that. But he's an ex-athlete and they were ex-athletes. Yep. I said, great, but I can't give you too much credit because you guys made a connection because of sports. All right.
Totally.
I need you to connect with the same way. If it's a lady on your team that never watched the sport, let's make her great. Okay.
Totally.
So I'm glad you said that. I think it's important for leaders to find that different approaches with that individual person to be able to bring the greatness out of them. So I thought that I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's beneficial for our leaders and our aspiring leaders to hear that.
Totally. The other benefit of sports too is I think, you lose a game and you're so pissed right after the game, right? But then the next day, what are you going to do? Keep crying about it? No, you're going to practice and you're going to win the next game, right? Exactly. I think that's the other thing too is my days are filled with crazy highs. I'm talking to Steve Wozniak and then crazy low. We have a lawsuit, a giant lawsuit or some crazy. And it's just you need to be able to keep recovering and keep moving as opposed to, there's periods of time where nothing feels like it's going right. Like the productivity isn't great. We didn't get any huge accounts. And I'm it's like punch in the face after punch. And then I'm everyone's so down and I'm it can't get worse. Something's going to come our way. We just got to keep going. And then the next day, some crazy account will get inked. And I'm see, it's just knowing that that's part of the process as opposed to wanting every day to be just a victory is not the way it works. I think that's the other thing people, kind of want. And you got to be more realistic with the process,
Lauren, with this company, and you talked about, all the benefits that come from having an exercise routine. You look at the businesses that you're working with, and some of these businesses, some of these, gyms and these fitness studios, some of them struggled mightily during COVID. Some of them went out of business. Some of them are done. You're helping them. You're helping them transform. You talked about that divide kind of that's existed historically between the fitness world and the tech world, and now you're helping to bridge that divide. When you think about the fact that you're helping these businesses, you're helping more people exercise from the comfort of their own home, or it may be more comfortable for them. I mean, that's a huge impact. I mean, I'm not saying you weren't having a big impact on Wall Street and what you did there on a daily basis, but this is a whole different animal. When you think about, the good that you are doing with this company that is so, so much a part of your life now, what thoughts come to mind for you?
Yeah, I always tell my mom, sometimes people will write this changed my life. I'm nobody said I made their life better on Wall Street. So that is certainly my own health may be deteriorating, but I'm hoping that we're improving the health of others. And same for the businesses. This is, they're now so, they've come to the realization that the gym hasn't evolved in 30 years. The treadmill hasn't evolved in 30 years. The dot just lights up around the track, which nobody likes to watch. Everything's been the same for a long time. And so I think that's it's just super exciting to watch everything evolve, and the pandemic really expedited that process, I think, and doing something that makes people's lives better is so. I guess that's the reason I would say to take a risk is that my life felt so great. I felt like I was killing it, and I felt but then I just woke up and decided to take this risk and felt such conviction, and I now could never fathom going back to my old career and just following the 10-year note auction and listening to the Fed or Reserve and talk every day. I'm not that that's not important, but I was what was I doing every day? It's a whole new purpose for work. And just, I think, you don't know what you don't know. So if you don't take the worst case scenario, you're a smart person, you go back to your old job, and life goes on. It's not the world is going to end. Yeah, maybe it's a little embarrassing. People are remember when she did that weird thing? It's whatever. That's, at least now I know what I have, and I'll appreciate what I'm at more versus just wondering,
Oh, Lauren, I like you, man. I love your approach to this thing. And just listening to you talk, you have it, which most success people have. They have it. You got to have some courage. You got to not be afraid to fail. One of my greatest sayings, people don't set goals because their will to win is not greater than their fear of losing.
Totally.
So they won't do it because they're thinking more about what if I don't hit the goal? You said, Lauren, who cares?
Who cares?
It's your life. If you don't hit the goal, make an adjustment and go back after that or do something else.
Exactly.
But I tell you this, Lauren, and for my people that's listening, take heed to this because Lauren was a winner in college. She played college sports. She won in college. Winners will always find a way to win. She won on Wall Street. Then she took a leap of faith and started her own. Like, winners will find a way to win, Lauren. So you keep leading the charge on that.
Totally.
Mateen, by the way, is available for hire as your personal hype man.
I know. I love it.
I'm like, this sounds like an introduction before you take the stage.
I'm going to dump a Gatorade.
It was the B word. She got my attention. I'm trying to get on the team.
Yep.
You made an interesting point in our initial conversation that I want to ask you about. And this kind of circles back to what we were talking about with building out a team and being a leader and learning how to lead. The whole notion of hiring people at the right stage of their career and also the right stage for your company. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize, at least not right away. Can you talk about that a little bit and what you've been able to kind of identify as far as, who might be the right fit and who may not be the right fit, depending on, what juncture it is?
For sure. Yeah. Like I've in the early days, I was introduced to, these really senior people that worked at Google and Facebook and all these great companies, but they hired teams, they built big teams, and they didn't do the day-to-day grind. And at a startup, I mean, you're doing all the ugliest things, all the coolest things, but you're doing everything, right? And so I found that like getting introduced to these really great, high level executives at big companies, are they very smart and great, but they're not used to doing what the day-to-day is at your stage. And so you end up, or you try to get a corporate person to work in a startup. It's a very different atmosphere. If you work at Microsoft and you don't go to work, guess what? Microsoft life goes on. If you work at a startup and you don't go to work and work your hardest every week, guess what? That startup dies. And so, your impact is so different. And so I think it's important to understand, and to be clear about what really needs to get done. And are people really willing to do this? Is this a 9 to 5? Absolutely not. I email my team at all hours and I expect them to email me back. And so, is it ideal? No, but are we, working to build a bigger company where that's not the case? Yes. But when you're the only person that knows how to do something and you go on vacation, guess who I'm calling? You, because you're the only one that knows how to do it. And so making sure that people understand those expectations is really important. And I think it's hard. Yeah. If you bring somebody on that hasn't done that or just has aspirations to, it's important to be really clear about that, because I don't want people to think that, it is a 9 to 5 because it's not going to be. And I don't want somebody that has that attitude. I think that it's important to be really clear about that.
Now I got to put on my investigative reporter hat. Okay.
Okay.
Here we go. Now I have to ask the question. Now, did you ever miss hiring somebody and you they're not a fit, you thought, but you realize that they're not a culture fit? Totally.
You want all the things that I always knew were a problem ended up being the problem at the end of the whole situation.
Wow.
It's you just need to trust your gut. Like when my main partner, my COO, I trust him with my life. I wouldn't hesitate for anything. And when you don't have that with the core people, then it always ends up just kind of coming to the surface at a later point. And it's sometimes I wanted it so bad for it to work out, or I wanted, this person to rise to the occasion. But at the end of the day, the things that my gut's always been right about things. We were looking at some big hires recently, and I just in the interview got a weird feeling. And I did some investigative work thanks to LinkedIn, and I was praying that I was wrong because everybody else was so on board. I was praying I was wrong, and exactly what I thought was the case. And so, because I have made those mistakes before, when I thought those things, I was like, this is too big a role to not really just do this investigative work. And I saved myself the agony because I've been down that road before, and everyone was against me. 9 other people against me. And I was like, maybe I'm paranoid. And at the end of the day, I found out from other people where they worked that ultimately what I thought was true. So I feel like really trusting your gut on those things is the most important thing.
Gotcha.
All right. So give us an update on where things stand right now with Forte, because, you said you were self-funded at the start. You've got investors now. I mean, that's for sure. And another thing you said, Mateen, and you're going to like this because this shows, the swagger that Lauren has. I think it's safe to say she has some swagger. She dropped some of the names earlier in the show of the company she's working with. And I remember you said, Lauren, you are focused on the big players in this space. You are going after the big fish. So give us kind of the lay of the land on where things stand with the company now and where you guys are headed.
Yep. So we initially actually had built a marketplace, and then we realized that the biggest companies don't want to, everyone wants Amazon and Netflix, but the big companies don't want to be a part of those things. So we decided to sort of do this white label sort of SaaS solution where we power the biggest guys without our branding and integrate into their own ecosystem. We actually decided to launch that right before the pandemic. So that infrastructure to build this from a tech perspective was developed. And then we've been rolling these guys out aggressively. We don't need to roll out millions. We're just focused on the biggest ones. I think like we are working with the YMCA, like the Young Men's Christian Association doesn't get written up in TechCrunch every day as the sexiest thing on the planet, but 23 million people is very sexy to me. And that's how many people go there. And so, I think that we're working with those guys. We're starting with the biggest guys, which obviously puts a lot of pressure on making it work because you can't get a bad reputation. And it's a lot that goes into scaling to these types of sizes from a tech perspective. But at the same time, we're trying to get as much market share as possible. So we're running as fast as we can. And yeah, it's been a whirlwind the last year and a half, especially.
Man, oh man, you guys are on fire. I mean, you've only been in business, 2015 was the start. I mean, it hasn't been that long, but I mean, I guess one other thing I was just thinking about is, if you went back to the start, if you went back to 2015 and you could do something different based on what you've learned over the last almost 6 years now, what is that thing?
Yeah, I would do everything differently. I literally was like, let me go build a tech company. I didn't know one person in tech. I went on my LinkedIn, I typed in tech. I'm like, I only know traders and people in finance. I was like, I knew 2 people and those 2 people were instrumental in helping me get started. Like I didn't even know where to go or where to begin. But that was like also like I would just go to tech events. Like I had no idea what people were talking about. I would like ask tech people like, what is the cloud? Like everything's in the cloud. Like what is the cloud? Like how does that work? What is the internet? Like let's back it up. Like I don't even know. Most people don't know. They're just not too embarrassed to admit. Like how does the internet even work? Like I'm trying to build a tech company and I'm like, let's start with this computer. How is this thing working? Like, like I think like, you don't know. I think that was a fun part of the process too. Just like learning that stuff and like thinking that like you could never get there and getting there and now knowing, a lot more than you knew before. I think that was a fun part of the process. I would do it differently because I wasted a lot of time trying to figure out where to find engineers and where to do all those things. Right. So it's but at the same time, I probably had a better experience or built better relationships because I was sort of like, when you build a company, you don't know exactly where it's going to go. You have an idea and often it ends up in a very different place than you intend it to go. And so, you just start going and then all these opportunities come at you, like hospitals want to work with you or other industries. And you have to decide like what to focus on. Right. And so it may go in a totally different path, I think. And so that's like, now it's a business. Like we sign a client, we put the coin in, it goes down the account management line, it comes out and it starts spitting out revenue. And like, but it took a long time to actually create that like very concrete business. Right. And so all the other parts of it, we're building this technology and you're just like finding your path. And it takes a while to actually get it to that place where it's very concrete about, what the execution is. And, it becomes more of doing a masterful playbook replicated over and over, as opposed to, just pondering where it could go. It's a different era now.
And Justin, let me throw this in because Justin, you are working with some fantastic brands, and then your vision is to go after some other fantastic brands. Now, how particular are you about your brand? Because I know you're starting to grow and you're having success, and you're going to have some people trying to pull you in certain directions. So, what's your angle as far as your brand?
For sure. Yeah. I think I've always been, I think the one thing, like when I pitch a company, like I was pitching the UFC, they're like, so this is what goes on in our gym. This is our ethos. I'm like, you don't have to tell me, I've been there 100 times. Like, I feel like that's what I'm so passionate about it, that I think I want everyone to really, I'm like, the best way to build a relationship with these people, go work out with them at the place that they're very proud and operate every day. And I think like I make sure that our team does that. And I'm like, I want you to want to do that. And I think like that's really important to me. And also just like from the gym's perspective, they're really scared of technology. So like helping them like understand the benefits of it and make them feel a part of the process, because it's their business I'm trying to build this for. So I'm like, listen to the customer and figure out like, what they want. And we integrate with a lot of these gym management payment software companies, sort of like the open tables for the gyms. Okay. And this is what every client says: we use XYZ and we hate it. And I'm like, my number one goal is to never be the company that they say we use this for digital fitness and we hate it. I'm like, that is like my, the number one thing. I want them to feel good about it. And I want them to feel like when we say we're going to do things, we do them. And, I think a lot of newer companies have that mentality versus like the old days. It was like, if you want to cancel a gym membership, it was like, we penalize you and you can't. And like, it's like now I just want to build something great and they can leave at any time, but they won't want to leave, versus like that other mentality. I think that was, just really locking people in. I don't think people have patience for that as much anymore.
No, not anymore. By the way, did you actually go get in the octagon when you were pitching UFC?
No, but I'm like, I just want to hit you. I don't actually want to get hit in the face. I don't really love them. But I always wonder what could happen. Those charity fights, I'm so intrigued, but I'd have to really. I
don't know that I would bet against you, Lauren. I'm just saying.
No.
Not based on what we know about you, and like Mateen said, how driven you are. But no, you have it's a super cool idea, and now it's obviously a successful company. And tell people out there, if they are interested in finding out how they can take advantage of your technology. And I mean, this for people who may have missed this early in the conversation. I mean, essentially you can find different studios and gyms that like celebrities go and work out at, and you can do the same workout from the comfort of your own home. So tell them how they can learn more if they're interested.
For sure. So our platform, it's goforte.fit. And then you could see the companies that we power. And you could always email us too at partnerships@forte.fit. We're always hiring too. We're definitely aggressively hiring. So anybody out there, engineers, everything, please reach out. And I would say, if you feel free to write, obviously, us anytime. And if you have any great gyms that you go to and love, I'd love to know about it as well. I think the bottom line is just do it. Just do whatever you've been thinking about it instead of thinking about it, and then go from there.
Great stuff. Yeah. Lauren Foundos, thanks so much for joining us. Really great conversation. We wish you all the best as you continue to grow the company.
Thank you so much.